Hello friends and welcome to another video. I just got this question and I wanted to talk a little bit about mastering. Now you can certainly pay for mastering services. I believe there's many services out there where you can actually upload your file and they will master the track on your behalf, whether that's using a preset or some type of algorithm or AI for that matter. However, I believe that you should be able to master your own tracks. Every music track deserves a little bit of your personal input. But you have to use your ears, obviously, and use your own judgment and intuition when it comes to mastering. But we need to start at the beginning. In order to make the mastering easier, we need to have the right composition and the right production. What I mean by that is that you need to have everything in place from the beginning. So if you're composing a track and you're adding instrument after instrument and you have a lot of tracks, right? Like if you have endless faders, and you need to mix all of those different elements, then it's going to be a challenge. Now, the purpose of mastering is to make your music as clear as possible and as loud as possible. This is the part where a lot of people obsess about mastering. We want our music to be loud. And for a reason, we need to have our music to be loud enough in order to be competitive in different libraries. Now, we need to understand genre. We need to understand what type of levels we're going for. And a lot of people obsess about this. I believe I've done a video about levels in mastering quite recently. But if we're composing, or we're mastering, I should say, because we're talking and we're focusing here on mastering. But if we're mastering an ambient track, then, how loud does an ambient track need to be, right? If we're doing a jazz track, and, is the treatment that we're adding to that jazz track or ambient track the same that we're adding to an EDM track or a house track or a hip hop track for that matter, where it needs to be like really punching? So we need to take in considerations all of these elements. However, we need to be able to mix and master our own music. And I use mastering and mixing in the same sentence because one depends on the other. And the best way to describe this, or to put it into a context here, if we're working with a different medium that is not music, let's say that it's video or photography, because you don't need to be an expert in videography or be a photographer, a professional photographer for that matter, but we understand that the source needs to be captured as good as possible. So we need the right light. If we're talking about photography or video, we need to be able to capture that image. And, if that image is not captured in the best way, under the best possible light, or in the context of the frame that we're working here with, then it's going to be very hard to artificially manipulate that later on in Photoshop or whatever. So for us musicians and composers, whether we're using a plugin or a real instrument, it needs to be the right sound. It needs to be the right sound, the right preset, the right plugin, the right sample. It doesn't matter if it's higher end plugin or samples. It just has to be the right one. Now, my philosophies and my teachings when it comes to music production, mixing and mastering, is to do this with stuff that you already have. It's not about a special plugin, even though you can purchase different plugins in order to master your music. But you should be able to mix and master your tracks with, just master your track. Let's just focus on mastering here, okay, right now. But you should be able to master your track by using just an EQ, a compressor, and a limiter. That's it. And this could be stock plugins that comes with your DAW. So that's my whole philosophy. And all of my teachings, even in my premium course, are all based on stuff that comes with your DAW. Okay, so inside my premium course, shameless plug here, I use Logic, all right? And everything that I'm using to mix and master my track is stock plugins, meaning that they come with my DAW. So if you're using other DAWs, for that matter, Cubase or Live or whatever it is, whatever it happens to be, these DAWs come already with plugins that you should be able to use in order to master your music. You just need to know how to use this, but a lot of people get obsessed about the plugins. Now, in the past, I have used Ozone. It's a great plugin if you don't have an idea of what you're doing when it comes to mastering. So that's a great starting point. It comes with presets. So you can start off there. Be careful with presets though, because presets are usually too much. they're really, because it doesn't know exactly what type of music you're giving it, right? When you add a preset, then it tends to enhance too much the higher end or too much bass or whatever. So you got to be careful with that. I mean, even Logic has now a mastering plugin. I've used it, and it's pretty good. It analyzes the thing, and it will spit out a custom preset based on your track. So that's very handy for us composers. However, you should be able to do it by yourself and practice. It just takes practice to master your music. Don't obsess too much about it, but keep things simple. I believe in simplicity. So the less tracks you have, the easier it's going to be for you to mix your music. The louder it's going to sound. And because that's the purpose of mastering. We want our music to be very clear, transparent, and have a volume, right? So we need to simplify the process and keep it very simple without overwhelming ourselves. You can certainly master your track in the same session as well, something I teach. Right, so you can compose a music track, you can mix it in the same session, and then you can master it right there and then as well. But I dive very deep into mastering in my paid programs, for that matter. Okay, step-by-step process of what happens with the mastering process. But you can certainly pay. Okay, you can actually get Ozone, like you were mentioning in the comment. You can pay other services. You can actually upload your music track or your file online, and it will do the thing for you. It will spit it out, and I don't know how much you have to pay. I don't know if you pay a subscription. I mean, there's many ways to do this, but definitely I advise composers and musicians to just learn the steps in order to master your own music, because it's very simple. It's not that complicated. But you need to trust your ears, and you need to trust your judgment, and really go with the flow of the music, meaning that you enhance whatever is already there. Okay, so if the mixing and the production are not good, then you're going to be enhancing something that is not good. And that's why I bring up the analogy of photography and videography here in this conversation, because I guess everybody understands that if this room was pretty dark, the image will not be as clear as possible, right? I have some lights right in front of me in order to get the best quality in terms of the video. So the same applies for music. The source needs to be good, whatever that means. And it's not about how expensive the plugin is, it's about how you're using those sounds in relationship to each other. Because mastering is pretty much just enhancing whatever you have captured in the recording, or whatever you have recorded, right? And this applies for plugins or even something that you're playing that is a real instrument. Okay, so if I'm recording my guitar, then I have to have the microphone in the right place. The guitar needs to be in tune, and I must be able to capture the performance in the best possible way. Because I cannot enhance that performance later on in the DAW. I mean, there's so much that I can do. I can enhance and stretch even time inside the DAW if I'm out of time with my playing and all of this. But the idea is to capture something from the source to be as good as possible, whether I am playing it or I'm using some plugins and some samples. And that sound has to be as clear as possible from the get-go, so when the mastering comes into play, it should be easy. It shouldn't be something that I'm going to be trying to fix, right? If you can't master your own tracks and you feel really unhappy with it, it's most likely that you have to go back into the mixing process. And if you can't mix your music, then you have to go back into the instrumentation and the production, the arrangement. That's why it's so important to start off in the right note, so to speak. Think with the end in mind. Your music should sound in the ballpark with just a few instruments, okay? And the mastering is just about giving it that lift, that extra, enhancement, similar to videographers and photographers, right? Just give it a little bit of more brightness, or work with the contrast and saturation and all of this. But there's only so much we can do, right, at the end of the creative process. Anyways, this is a quick video that I wanted to drop. I might master one of my tracks here on the fly one of these days, but I've done this multiple times here on the channel already. If you're new to this, download my free guide, link in the description. Mastering, again, is very subjective, and mixing as well. It's about what you want to hear and what you want to listen from your music. Somebody else's music might sound different to you, and in fact, the way you listen to your music is completely different to the way I listen to my music. Obviously, within reason, we can tell that this is badly mastered and mixed, and this is just a matter of taste, okay? Because we all hear music in different ways. But the power comes when we know exactly what we want to hear, and to be brave enough to say, that sounds bad, and this sounds good. And only you can make that decision by knowing how to do it and why it sounds bad. That's the most important question. Why it sounds bad, and try to identify what's the problem with your music and your masters. All right? But we cannot just judge the mastering. The mastering is not the problem, and it's not the focus, and not even the mix. A lot of people focus on the mix, okay? I mean, if I could tell you how many times I get questions about mixing and mastering, you know, it's usually not a problem. When I listen to the music and I do track reviews, it's not the mixing and it's not the mastering. It's the composition and the arrangement, and of course the instrumentation. So always have to go back to the beginning. And that's where we need to start. With the end in mind, but start at the beginning and be very conscious of the instrumentations that we're using in our tracks, and of course the composition, the arrangement, and how this track evolves. And ask yourself, really, how many tracks do you need in your production? Because remember, the more tracks you have, the harder it's going to be to mix, and the harder it's going to be to master. I hope this video finds you well, my friend. Thank you so much for all the love and support, and I'll see you in another video.